Earlier this month, a Cameroonian man died while in ICE custody, ICE custody, out in California. Here to talk about that death, about the forces behind it, and what we may expect is Sylvie Bello. Sylvie is the founder and CEO of the Cameroon American Council, or CAC. She has helped organize a vigil on behalf of the man who died, and she will shed some light on that for us now. First of all, Sylvie Bello, thank you for coming on the program.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for lifting up our brother. And I'm so we're distraught, but we are grateful that there's an opportunity to just share about him and how the system has failed us. And yeah.
So first of all, let's talk about Nebani Abienwe, if I pronounce that correctly. He's 37-year-old man who died while in U.S. Immigrations and Custom Enforcement custody. Is that right?
Yes, he goes by Neba. But yes, Nabin Abenui, and Nui means God. And he's from a wonderful family. He's a father of six, 37. October 28th would have been his 38th birthday. He is what we call in Cameroon a chopchier. Chop means eat in Pidgin English, and chair is always chair. And it's a cultural title for, and a rural title. He took over his basically successor. And that happened, unfortunately, quickly because his parents passed away when they were young. So in a young age, he had to quickly become a successor, which forced him to drop out of school to take care of his siblings and the greater family and the clan. And he has taken on such sacrifices from a young age, and again made that sacrifice when fleeing one of the five wars happened. And the reason I'm saying one of the five is because we still need answers from ICE regarding what happened. Trekked through 8 countries, and had the elements against him, the environmental element against him, just being a black body going through, various countries, because as we know, there's anti-blackness, not just in America, but it meets us at home as well, and across the Americas, where he was coming from Ecuador and making his way to the north to America. So, and unfortunately, it amazes the family, it amazes the community, how a 37-year-old man who crossed 8 countries, trekked when there are people who can't even go 8 blocks, right, for many reasons, healthy, would just die.
Yeah, and I want to get to that. Yeah, I want to get to that because it's part of the story. I don't think any of us understand. I know I don't. But Sylvia, I want to start first for our listeners who don't fully understand or may not know at all what's going on in Cameroon right now. There's a lot of warfare, civil unrest. Can you just tell us a little bit about the situation there and why someone like Neba might need to leave?
Thank you for that question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Cameroon is just going through a lot. Just the name Cameroon itself is for the Portuguese Camoros. And that's the beginning of the problem. It's colonial oppressive exploitation that has, after 400 years, well, more than 400 years when you look at the Dominican Republic, but for the United States context, 400 years of not just colonization, not just going back just to colonization, but all the way back to slavery and the Portuguese who met a group of people and thought that they knew better and colonized our land, called it Camaros, called the river Rio dos Camaros, which we called River Wuri, called the Rio dos Camaros and called the land Cameroon. The Germans came in the 1800s and oppressed us more. Actually, the Germans practiced, right? Because before the Holocaust, they needed some kind of practice area, and they practiced on us, right? And amazingly, after World War I, Germany was kicked out of Cameroon. The United States provided a Marshall Fund to a murderous nation, right, that not only practiced the Holocaust, pre-Holocaust and Holocaust on Cameroon, but also on other countries and people around the world, right? The American government provided the Marshall Fund to rebuild Germany. There was no reparation done to rebuild Cameroon. The world provided reparations to the victims of the Holocaust from Germany and its oppressors, never provided reparations to Cameroon, right? So after the Germans were kicked out by the League of Nations, today's the United Nations, the French and the English doubled down on the oppression. Part of present-day Cameroon was divided to the British oppressors. So, Prince Harry and Prince William, don't let all of that fool you. These were oppressors. Their grandparents were oppressors who oppressed us, and the result of today, France and Great Britain oppressed us for about 40 years, and then all of a sudden just quit. With that, again, with no Marshall Plan, like what happened with Germany, with no reparations, like what happened to the Jewish victims, nothing. They just up and left a botched, left an unfinished process, which led to the Anglophone crisis. I know for Americans, Anglophone, means British or English, but these are all African people who we were stripped from our land, stripped from our erased our sacred lands, our religion, and now because the way human nature is, folks are going to fight over stupid things, including skin color, including gender, including sexual preference. And in Cameroon, it's language. Right. And it's not even the language, it's not even like the language of our ancestors. It's not like our language. We're fighting over oppressed language of the oppressors, French and English, and the fact that it was botched and the fact that the closure. So there's that. That is the biggest. We have 4 others, but the separatist movement is calling into question our, what the entity now known as Cameroon is, and that's Neba is from Chum Village. Chum Village is in the storied Bafut Kingdom, and Bafut is in the northwest region in the Anglophone zone. So he is fleeing this separatist movement. The second conflict, which is the Boko Haram in the north. So Bafut is in the northwest. Boko Haram is in the north. It borders the northwest. The Boko Haram, 1 million refugees from Nigeria into Cameroon. Right now, with the Boko Haram from Nigeria, they are also Cameroon-bred terrorists. This is on the north. In the east of Cameroon, we have Central African Republic with the terrorism group. They're known as the Seleka and the Antibakala, and they're coming into Cameroon from the east, and 500,000 refugees, as well as fortunately, when you have porous borders and artificial borders made by European oppressors, you're going to have homebred terrorism as well coming in. Those are three right there. The next two, one is the post-electoral campaign and, well, election. The campaign ended. The post-electoral election from 2018, which has devastated the whole country, including the area that Niba is from, which is the Northwest region where he's from, because the Northwest region is that's where the opposition of Cameroon started. Cameroon, after the colonial
Oh, I
oppressors,
see. Okay.
yeah.
So,
And the last is the cultural conflict. So those are the five. Thank you.
so, and let's get, so Neba was a leader in the Northeast, in the English-speaking or Anglophone area, and did he leave Cameroon to escape the violence? Was that, in other words, was he a political refugee, an asylum seeker?
That's a great question. So it's the Northwest, which is next to Nigeria. If you're looking at the map, the Northwest region, he's from Bafut in the Northwest region. Well, that's why we would like for the family to not only identify the body, but to give a full account, right? What he was fleeing. It's very probable that he was fleeing one or all of the five armed conflicts happening, because his village where he is from it's at the nexus, the Northwest region of Cameroon. It's at the nexus of the Anglophone crisis, of Boko Haram. It's next door to Boko Haram. There's a Damawa that connects to the east, and the cultural and religious wars conflicts that are happening, and the post-electoral. He could be fleeing any one of those and all of those.
And Sylvia,
but right now, we don't know.
And I ask that question, of course, because although Trump and others don't want Americans to know this, our law and the treaties which we signed say that we should have a process for admitting, screening, and accepting people who are seeking asylum, people who are refugees from political violence. And since there's so much to indicate that Neba Abiam, we may have been such a refugee, he had a legitimate right to be here. And before I let you go, I do want to talk a little bit about the conditions under which he died, because it's very curious to me that a 37-year-old man who was able to travel through so many countries to get here, arrived, was detained at the Otay Mesa Detention Center in San Diego, September 19th, suddenly dies from a brain hemorrhage. It seems strange. I mean, do we know why? Was there, did he have health problems? Was there a blow to his head? Do we know what happened?
What we know is that historically Black bodies have been discriminated against. That's what we know. Mm-hmm. What we do not know is if the person they're telling us is in fact Neba. One, because the Cameroonian passports are not biometrics. Right? There's no way to get his fingerprints off of the passport and match it to the body, right? The said body they have there. That's one. Two, we don't have dental records to match. We don't know who the person the ICE is telling us is Neba. If it's Neba, why? No one has identified the body. The family is still in Cameroon. The wife, the brothers, they're still in Cameroon. The kids. So the first top of the line is like, who are they telling us died? On September 26th, we are told that he has a brain hemorrhage. On September 26th, no one, whether or not they're fleeing political crisis or they're just coming here, for visits, should die because of what they believe in or why they're moving in. Like, no one should die because of that. So whatever he was running from, we don't even know, because there is no family here to let us know. So that's why we are calling on Congress. We're calling on ICE, on the Cameroon embassy, to bring the family so that the family can identify the body and make sure that this is their father, their brother. And then the second thing is, what is the timeline? Like you mentioned.
Right.
37, 38, trekked 8 countries, and then boom, nothing. What happened to him? Right?
I'd also like to know the timeline of his care, because, ICE put out a news release saying he received comprehensive medical care. Physicians at Chula Vista provided treatment to him. When was he first showing symptoms? When was he taken to the hospital? Did he get timely care? Did he get appropriate care? How did he develop a brain hemorrhage? I mean, it seems to me these are all questions of life and death, of potential mistreatment at the hands of ICE, which there have been other cases of mistreatment that I think the public, and especially his family and friends, have a right to know.
We have a right to know. The public has the right to know. And I'm just going to say this about ICE. We're so happy that you've considered us. ICE, the reason why we need the family to come out is that ICE does not want to share the information with the family's representatives and with the Cameroon American Council, even though the family has appointed 3 family representatives and the Cameroon American Council as an institutional rep. But ICE has refused to share any information with us. What they've said is that the family has to authorize us, outside of what the family, the written, notification that the family has said. So, if that's the case, we've told ICE, go ahead and send us, because we want to know the timeline. We said, go ahead and send us a waiver so that the family can sign. I sent us a document, and on the document it says immigrants should fill out the form, and we're like, hey, the person who is in detention is deceased. Do you have a form for a deceased where it will now be a third party, which will be the next of kin, who will fill out the form and then have the family representatives represent them? ICE tells us they don't have that kind of a form. And we are like very distraught, because how can we have over 20 people have died in this Trump administration, and there is no form that a next of kin can fill out to provide representation for them to get information? So if you're not able to provide a form for the next of kin that's not in America to get information, and you're not able to have the family come identify the body, what are you doing with the body? To someone who is our chokche, someone who is our cultural leader, somebody whom we depend on their cultural rights. President Trump, just a few weeks ago, was at the United Nations, and he said, and was the first ever, person or country or president to ever have a religious freedom roundtable at the UN. The African spirituality is not part of this religious freedom. We are on day 10, and we are not able to process. We're not able to practice. We're not able to provide the cultural rights. So it's not enough that colonial oppression wiped out our sacred lands and our sacred religion. So the little things that we can hang on to, we can't do it as an individual. So does it need a congressional action for ICE to have a document for a deceased person in their custody, to have the next of kin of a deceased person to provide representation? So this goes even beyond, as an African immigrant activist and as an immigrant activist in general, and being that this fight that is called hashtag Justice for Abingwi has been intersectional. We had Central Americans come to the vigil. We had Black LGBT and the greater LGBT. We had, so it's intersectional. So we are looking at this case and we're asking ourselves, what happened to the 20 plus others before NIBA? What happened to them? What did ICE do with them?
Now, I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it's tragic that the historical injustices of the past are still being carried on today. Sylvie, we only have about 30 seconds left. Where can people go to find more information about this?
Thank you so much. Of course, on your website, once you put it out, but also our Facebook and Twitter handle are at CAMA, again, MER Council. Or you could just put hashtag Cameroon American Council. For the campaign is open to all. We're transsectional. We are intersectional. We are for everyone, and we're asking everyone to please keep us in our thoughts and prayers. It's hashtag Justice for, FOR, not the number 4, but the word for, Abingwi, which is his last name, ABIENWI. And we're just so grateful for the prayers. We're asking on Congress to put out, a form for release that pertains to a deceased next of kin. We're asking for ICE to bring the family to identify the couplings, to identify the body, since ICE doesn't want the representatives, to get information. And, we are asking for ICE to just shut it down and be more humane. No one should die because they're seeking refuge, especially Black people.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. Thank you for that information. I wish you all the best in this struggle. Sylvie Bello, founder and CEO of the Cameroon American Association. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you. Bye-bye.